Samran,
Yeah, you can repeat.
yeah. Thank you very much, everyone. Welcome to this webinar. It's about how to write doctoral proposals to study in Australia. Today we have a very honorable guest, Dr. Lynette. She's Academic Language and Literacy Advisor at Monash University, and also she's Senior Fellow of the Higher Education Academy. Recently, she published a very interesting paper entitled Postural Care in Doctoral Education, a collaborative autoethnography of belonging and academic identity. So we don't want to waste our time, and we give the whole time to her share the important and very vital information with us. The floor is yours. Please go ahead.
Thank you. I'm just going to share my slides here now. So hopefully you can all see my slides. I'll open the chat box on the side in case you have any questions along the way, and there should be time afterwards for some discussion as well. So as you heard, I'm Lynette. I'm one of the people working in the Faculty of Education at Monash University. And today I'm going to talk to you about the proposal writing, what it is, what goes into the different sections of the proposal, and why you have to write it, and what the potential supervisors look for in it, and how to approach potential supervisors. So we are in Australia, and in Australia, it is customary for us to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands on where we meet. This may also be the case from wherever you are joining us today, and I am acknowledging the traditional owners of the Bunurong people that I am meeting you from today. So in terms of research proposals, there are many different ones, and that if you look on the internet, you can find many different templates and things. But the purpose of a research proposal for a PhD is that it outlines what you propose to do if you were to be a PhD student. So to do that, usually you start by highlighting your motivation, like why you are interested in this particular topic. And then this proposed supervisor that you contact reads it, and it helps them decide whether they are the best person to be the supervisor for you. It also helps the supervisor assess the types of support that you may need, such as, for example, academic writing training, for you to successfully complete a PhD. Now, the initial proposal, there is no precise limit, but in general, the proposals I usually receive are about 3,000 words in length. So what you would do is you would send this initial proposal to seek out a potential supervisor. Once you've found a supervisor, they will help you to further refine that, and that is then sent to the university as part of your application to attend the university. So this is the general structure of the proposal. So you start by talking about what will you do and why you want to do it. Then you will review briefly the literature in that field to say what is known and what is unknown in the field. And then explain, so therefore, what do you hope to discover? So what are you going to do to help fill that gap of the unknown that you highlighted in the literature review? And then you talk about what you are going to do to try and figure that out. So this is a methodology. It's not a complete methodology, but it is a suggested methodology of what you're going to do, so that the supervisor knows what you plan to do and whether they are able to advise you in that sort of setting. And it's also useful to talk about the contribution of your research. So this, you're not necessarily going to get the next Nobel Prize for your PhD that you're proposing to do, but you are still going to make a contribution that can be fill the gap, but also contribute to your local community, help teachers do something more effectively in their schools, help society in some way. That's the sort of contribution that you're talking about. And so the purpose of the proposal is therefore to show that you have actually gone through what is out there a little bit, and you do understand the academic landscape. So you are actually going to engage in a genuine academic inquiry. and that you are able to link what you plan to do with what others have done before, because a PhD is given to someone for generating new knowledge. That's what the title of doctor is given for. And so you need to show how you can take other people's work, put it together, and therefore show where your work will go on top of that. So how you will add value to what is already out there. Usually it also establishes a general theoretical lens, though this is often not very in-depth yet, because understanding that is very complex and takes a long time. But a general structure of where you're hoping to go in terms of theory is usually listed as well. So this is the general organization of the document. Each of the sections are worth about the same number of words in that 3,000 words that I've suggested before. So firstly, your motivations for doing the research. So it's like the broad general area of research and why this particular topic that you're interested in is particularly important to you. Now, this can be based on your personal experience, your previous research, or just something that's really interesting to you from the literature, but explaining what that is. And then you go to the literature discussion. And the focus here should not be on saying, you know, Lynette's study said, and then write a paragraph about that study, and then some study said, and write another paragraph on that. The focus here is on themes. What are the major themes that are coming out of the literature related to this topic? So you're supposed to be showing critical analysis and synthesis of ideas so that you can show that you can put ideas together and see how some studies fit together and other studies don't fit together. So therefore you can identify where there is areas that there's disagreement, so they don't know the answer yet, and some areas that no one's even looked at before. And so that, because that is where your research will be contributing. So you're focusing on those major themes in the field and how things fit together and not fit together. And then you propose some general research questions that you think you would like to ask in your study based on what you have so far discovered in the literature. Then you provide your theoretical lens that I said to you before, and I'll show you an example of that. But it is a general theoretical orientation that you're talking about here. You may not yet know in depth you're going to use this particular philosopher's theory yet, but you may have a general idea of where you think you fit. And then you go to the methodology, and while the methodology doesn't have to be extensive, it does need to include the following things. So your general overarching research design, so whether you're wanting to do quantitative, qualitative, or mixed methods research, then the type of research methodology within that. So for example, if you've chosen qualitative research as your research design, maybe you want to do a case study or an autoethnography or some sort of narrative research. So this is what you would write there and explain why you think that is the way to go for your topic. And then some suggested methods that you will use to get your data. So maybe you want to do a case study and you're going to do some interviews with people and some focus group discussions afterwards. This is so that you can show that you've at least thought about how you're going to do the research project in the time frame you have, but also so that the supervisor can see whether it aligns with their expertise in their particular methodological areas. So in terms of your motivation or rationale, this can sometimes be hard to articulate clearly, because you just, you have this feeling that you really need to do this thing, but you need to write it out in words. So I suggest you start with this prompt. So think about the topic. You're working on this topic because you want to find out maybe how something works, or why something is that way, or whether something can happen if you do something to it. And then think about, why are you doing this, so that you can help others understand what. So then you've got your motivation as well as that contribution of your research. articulated, and you can write that out then in a nice paragraph afterwards. So this is an example of a paragraph that it explains the motivation. So this is something that I recently wrote. And you can see here, I talk about myself. So what my current job is. I'm currently working in higher education. I work closely with graduate students. In reality, I've discovered that a lot of that revolves around pastoral care for students. And I have realized that they come to me because they need help and they don't know where to go. And so while I have some of the skills, I realize that sometimes they need additional support. And so because of this, I've become increasingly interested in this particular field. So this is an example of a motivation paragraph. You will see that it's written in first person. The idea being you're talking about yourself and why you are interested in this topic. So it should be in first person, but it's still written in that academic sort of tone otherwise. It's proper paragraphs, clearly articulating some of your background, how you came to be where you are now, and why that has helped shape your interest in this particular topic that you are interested in. So remember, with the literature review, I mentioned that it is not just a literature summary. It's not a summary of individual studies. It is looking at those themes that you're thinking about. So look at how the work that you're reading relates to what you are proposing to do for your project. You are supposed to be critiquing existing work, though your supervisors will understand that this may not yet be at a PhD level, but you are supposed to be talking about how those studies may be strong or weak in some aspects, how some things may be assumptions that may not work in your context or things like that, so that you are able to establish that gap in the research. And then therefore identify some opportunities for further work, which is in your case, your proposed thesis that you would like to do. So when you are looking at the literature, read it for how it relates to what you want to do. And always think when they're saying something, so what, why does this matter to this topic that I'm interested in? And how does it fit or not with the other things that I've read so far? And that way you can focus more on the themes rather than the individual studies. So when you are discussing your literature review, don't try and summarize, so-and-so did this study, they did it in this way, and they found these findings. Look at the findings and the implications of the study and link those together, so that you can focus more on the outcomes rather than the way the studies were conducted. And so move beyond describing, so that what, when, where type questions. Move beyond that. So analysis and synthesis talks about how things fit together or don't fit together and why that is. And then moving towards that evaluation and reflecting section, talk about the implications and why those things matter for the topic you're interested in. And the purple and the red circles are the ones that you should focus on in the literature review section. So this is an example of a literature review paragraph, and this is what would be expected in your writing. So you can see that there are many different references here of studies put together. It's written with a very clear argument that's being made. So you'll see it starts at the beginning with a topic sentence that says academic writing is very important for doctoral students, right? It ends with a linking sentence that says writing thus becomes a fraught aspect of academic identity associated with fear and anxiety. So this paragraph's purpose is to say that doctoral students and researchers need to do lots of writing, but it has a lot of problems causing anxiety when they want to write. And to do that, what we've done is we've taken all those studies and seen how they fit together. So if you look at the second sentence, you'll see that it says a key measure of success is the successful completion of the thesis. And we've put 3 different references there because we're able to see that those 3 different studies all say this. They may be looking in different contexts or with different participants or something, but they're all saying this particular point, that the thesis is very important. And if you look at the, what is it, third last sentence, it says, the academic writing process is made more complicated through academia's valuing of written products over the process of writing. And then you see we've linked 2 references there. See, for example, these 2 references. And the reason we've done C, for example, is because we're saying, well, actually, there's lots of studies that say this. We've just drawn out 2 that we'd like to highlight. So this shows that you're able to connect with the literature and see the way that all the things fit together. And therefore, you're using your references to help you make the argument. So a good quality literature review paragraph makes a clear argument, has lots of evidence to back it up from lots of different studies to show how all the different ideas fit together to create the space, in this case, where there is a lot of anxiety and fear associated with academic writing, which the rest of this paper will talk about more. In terms of your research questions, there's many different ways in which you can design research questions, but I've got some basic strategies for you here. So firstly, try not to have questions that are very broad, like why are people sad? This is a question that is not actually able to be researched. You can't actually get a proper answer in the 80,000 words that you'll have to write your thesis. This is an example of a question that has either a yes answer or a no answer. And while it is something that you can do research on, it's very hard to write 80,000 words on something that's either just yes or no. So what you want is more specific and clear questions. So this is an example of a question that is through the PICO method. So PICO stands for Population, Intervention, Comparison, and Outcome. There are others that you can find online, but here is an example of one that generally the PICO strategy works quite well. So you've got a population, in this case, it's parents. You've got an intervention, so something was done. In this case, there were lockdowns for COVID-19. There's a comparison. This is before the lockdowns and after the lockdowns. And there is something that is being examined. In this case, the trust in teachers' professionalism. So you've got a specific and clear question which can be researched with a good research design to get an answer that you can write enough for your thesis. That's the sort of question you want to have in your proposal. A PhD, there are different numbers of questions, but in general, a PhD either consists of one big question with like 3 sub-questions, or it has 3 questions as a whole. Try not to have more than that because often that is not doable in the space that you have for your study. So I said to you before that you have to have a theoretical lens if possible. So this is an example of that, and I've highlighted for you in blue how I've taken this text to make it part of the study. So you'll see maybe in this case, I'm talking about power in PhD programs. So I give a justification because of the dynamic and complex relationship. I have decided to use the lens of Bourdieu's theory of practice, and then I explain it a little bit. And then I say, I've chosen this because this is important in my study, the fact that agency is considered. And in particular, I will use the conceptual thinking tools to help me understand something. You don't then have to go and further explain each of those concepts in detail. You will do that in your PhD later, but for your proposal, the idea is just to provide an overview of what you think you would be doing in your study. So Bourdieu is one of the ones that are frequently used in our faculty, but there are also many other theoretical people that you may find particularly interesting for you. The idea is just to see which sort of overarching concepts you are going to use to analyze your data. So here, things like power and capital are really important. And so for me to be able to talk about those things, I need a theory that looks at those things. So in your case, if you are looking, for example, at trying to emancipate a particular culture or group, or working to lift someone out of oppression, maybe instead you would use something like Paulo Freire's theories of education for the oppressed. So that's the idea, to talk about the big ideas and concepts that you would like to use in your study. The methodology is generally structured in this quite simple strategy. What are you going to do? Why are you doing it that way? And how do you hope to do it? So here is an example. Once again, as I said before, the methodology doesn't have to be super detailed, but it does need to be detailed enough that the supervisor can understand what it is you hope to do and whether they are the best person you'd like to supervise you for that, or whether they would need for the second supervisor to work in that particular area, because they may have more expertise as the second supervisor. So here you can see I'm saying I propose I will use autoethnography. I describe a little bit of what autoethnography is, and then I talk about why I want to use it, because it has been previously said that this is a method that's good for situations where there is a cultural issue. And then you'll see I say, to conduct this, I will do the following, because autoethnography is a study of the self. So because of that, I will engage with conversations with myself. I will collect some artifacts from my past, and I will consult some knowledgeable others, let's say my parents or my siblings, to learn more about the experiences I had in my past. That's the level of detail you would go into in the methodology section. So then once you've got your proposal, your strategy is to then go and search for a potential supervisor. And this can actually be quite time consuming and a little bit tedious, honestly, because they can be quite hard to find. There are a lot of regulations with supervisors. So for example, the number of students you're allowed to have is limited. And so sometimes supervisors just have physically no more space. So there are often it's like you contact someone, they say they can't do it, then you contact someone else, you go back and forth until you eventually find someone. To begin with, I would suggest searching the institutional websites for the universities that you're interested in going to, and I'll show you an example on the next slide. And look for researchers who have similar areas of interest. Now, this can be a general topic area, or a general theory that they use the same theory you do, or they use similar methodologies to what you want to use. So as an example, this is my page here on Monash's website, and most institutional websites generally look like this. You've got like a little picture of the person and where they work and the email address, and it'll tell you, for example, here whether they are accepting PhD students or not. So then you can see down the bottom here, it lists my research area keywords. So if, for example, you were interested in doctoral writing groups and collaborative learning and qualitative methods, I would be a great person to contact as your first contact point. So you're looking for someone who has a similar research area of interest to you. That may not be exactly the same, but it is in a sort of general direction the same, and in a methodology that is similar to what you want to use. They're the most important things to look for. So you can search the university's website. You can search by faculty, by research area, by keywords, all those sorts of things, and it'll index all the researchers at the various institutions. So then when you find someone, you can get their contact details on the front page and you can email them. So generally, email is usually the first point of contact. So write that email in a generally positive and collegial sort of tone. So aim for a professional email, you know, dear Dr. Pretorius, I'm contacting you because, right, that sort of writing. Briefly explain who you are and what your general qualifications are. So my name is so-and-so, and I am a graduate of University X. I have previously done the following degrees and have done some research in the field of whatever. And then talk about what it is that you hope to do. I'm contacting you because I would like to propose doing a PhD project on the following topic. So like a little paragraph description of what your proposed research project is going to be. If you have any scholarship funding, for example, list that there, because it can make a difference if the supervisor, for example, doesn't have to help you find funding. That may expedite the process of getting a supervisor to agree. And then to that email, you thereby attach the research proposal, which you have now written, as well as your CV. So your CV should include all the standard sort of things CVs include, like your contact details, your education, your previous experience. Make sure to also include any publications that you may already have, because these can quite often increase your chances of getting accepted at universities. If you've already got some research experience, for example, list that there, talk about how you may have done a minor thesis in some area, show that you are able to do research. Even if it was just a small research project, the idea is to demonstrate that you have research capacity. Also personalize the email to the person you're contacting. Don't just send blanket emails to everyone. That's exactly the same. Just personalize them to that person and their area of interest and how that links to your area of interest. And try not to send like multiple emails to lots of different people. So what's happened to me in the past is I've gotten students, they contact me, but they've also contacted 6 other people in our faculty with exactly the same email. And so then it kind of indicates to the supervisor that you don't really care who your supervisor is as long as someone accepts you, and you haven't had the attention to detail to actually think about these sorts of things. So pay attention to who you're going to contact and target the email clearly. Now, I have told you lots of things. I will give the slides to pursue to share with you. I've also got a video that basically says the same thing on YouTube, a short video. So you can just search for my name on YouTube and you can find it again. So I've purposely made this session about 30 minutes of me talking so that you then have another 20 or so minutes to ask me questions, because I understand that applying for a PhD is a very personal sort of thing, and you may have very specific questions that you would like to ask. So now is your time to ask any questions. You can ask questions by speaking or by typing into the chat box, whichever way you prefer.